Survivors. One ghost ship. The day the world got bigger, did you know the first ship to sail around the world came home looking like it had already died? Picture this. September 1522, the Spanish port of Sanlúcar de Barrameda. People are waiting for a proud armada, 5 tall ships marching back in formation. Instead, one broken silhouette staggers over the horizon. The Victoria is barely a ship anymore. Her sails hang in torn, filthy ribbons. The hull is rotting, seams gaping, masts scarred like bones sticking through skin. She crawls up the river, moving slower than the current, like the ocean is still trying to drag her back beneath the surface. Out of the 270 men who left 3 years earlier, only 18 will step onto the dock. And when they do, the dock workers freeze. These are not triumphant explorers. They look underground, like they've just climbed out of a grave. Clothes hanging in rags, faces hollowed into skulls, skin burned black and peeling from equatorial sun, crosshatched with scars from rope, blades, and disease. Their gums are swollen and purple, teeth loose or already gone. Mouths bleeding from scurvy every time they try to chew. Some can't even walk the last few feet. They have to be carried, or they collapse to their knees on the planks, kissing the wood because it isn't moving. The smell hits next. Rot, sweat, old blood, and a ship that hasn't been properly cleaned in months. This is the moment the world gets bigger, and it does not look heroic. It looks like survival horror. Think you know the Magellan Voyage from a classroom map? Don't be fooled. That clean red line looping neatly around the globe hides mutiny, starvation, secret orders, and bodies tossed overboard at night. The textbook version is a straight line. The real story is a maze. How about the fact that the man whose name is on that line isn't even here? Ferdinand Magellan is already a year dead, killed in a minor local war in the Philippines, on a beach most of Europe can't even find on a map yet. The man who actually brings the Victoria home, who closes the loop and completes the first circumnavigation, is Juan Sebastián Elcano. You've heard of Magellan. Elcano is the name buried beneath the headline. So why does history turn Magellan into the lone genius and Elcano into a footnote? Who decided which captain gets the credit and which one gets edited out? What this voyage really proves is bigger than a slogan like the Earth is round. Educated Europeans already suspected that. The shock is that you can sail around it in one continuous loop. That the Pacific is not a convenient shortcut, but a miles-wide ocean fortress stretching far beyond their maps. That the world's trade routes, empires, and power systems are about to be ripped open. Let's get into it. In this series, we're going to rewind from this ghost ship at the dock back to the moment the idea was pitched. Track every mutiny, every secret meeting, every mile of ocean where the crew thought they'd sailed off the edge of the world, and follow the few survivors who accidentally became the first humans to circle the planet. Before Magellan, what people really believed about the edge of the world before anyone sails, you need to erase one of the most persistent myths in history. No, these men were not terrified of tumbling off a cosmic waterfall. Did you know that by 1519, educated Europeans had been arguing about the exact size of a spherical Earth for nearly 2,000 years? Greek scholars like Eratosthenes had measured the globe using shadows and geometry, coming surprisingly close. Medieval universities taught a round planet. Navigators used curved Earth diagrams to explain why ships vanished hull first over the horizon. The edge of the world wasn't a cliff, it was a calculation. The problem was that the math was wrong and exactly the way you'd want it to be if you were trying to sell a dangerous voyage. Most maps in Magellan's time shrank the Earth, pushed Asia unrealistically far east, and treated the Pacific as a narrow blue hallway instead of a vast oceanic fortress stretching thousands of miles. On paper, the world looked tight, compact, almost convenient. Don't be fooled. What was truly mysterious was everything between the coastlines, the exact circumference of the globe, how the Atlantic connected to whatever lay beyond the Americas, whether there was a clean westward sea corridor to the fabled Spice Islands, the Maluku Islands, hidden deep in the Indonesian archipelago. Think you know expensive? In European markets, nutmeg and cloves were worth more than their weight in gold. A cargo hold packed from keel to deck beams with those spices could turn a leaky wooden hull into a floating bank vault. But there was a legal maze wrapped around that dream. Under the Treaty of Tordesillas, a line had been drawn down the map like a scar, slicing the non-European world into two secret halves. Portugal grabbed rights to the east, built a chain of fortified outposts around Africa, and turned the Indian Ocean into a controlled system of toll booths and cannons. They had the Cape route, the ports, the pilots, the gun platforms. Spain, newly rich from silver and sugar in the Americas, found itself locked out, staring at Portuguese choke points like a rival city watching another fortress control every gate. So the question became brutal and simple. Could you reach the Spice Islands by sailing west, stay on Spain's legal side of that invisible line, and still come home alive? For kings and bankers, the math was cold. One successful shipload of nutmeg, cloves, and cinnamon could pay for the entire expedition, settle the debts, and still leave everyone rich. Losing a few hundred sailors in the attempt? That loss vanished beneath the profit column. Into that world walks a minor Portuguese noble, recently out of favor with his own king, carrying charts, grudges, and a pitch. He claims he can reach the Spice Islands by going west under the Spanish flag, insists the oceans are narrower than the Portuguese believe, swears the voyage won't be as long or as deadly as the rumors. How about the fact that his entire plan depends on the world being smaller than it really is? Let's get into it. Because the man selling that lie, or that faith, is Ferdinand Magellan. And he's about to convince Spain to bet lives, silver, and its future empire on a map that is wrong in exactly the right way to get everyone killed. Next, you're in the room when he makes the pitch. Magellan the defector, a broken noble with a world-sized pitch here in Valladolid, 1518, looked down at the map on the table, oceans too small, continents stretched like taffy. A world that fits neatly into European ambition. Across from it stands a limping veteran with a ruined knee and a ruined reputation, about to sell a journey that might ruin a lot more. Ferdinand Magellan is not the clean-cut hero version you met in grade school. He's a minor Portuguese noble, the kind of man born with a title, but not enough land to match it. He's fought in India, sailed with fleets that clawed their way into the Indian Ocean spice system and bled in Morocco, where a spear wound left him permanently damaged. Did you know the man who would lead the first circumnavigation was already half broken before he left port? Back home, it gets worse. He's accused of illegal trading, of skimming profit from royal voyages in the East. The Portuguese crown audits him, underpays him, then quietly freezes him out. King Manuel I refuses his petitions, denies him promotion, treats him like a disposable cog in a very lucrative machine. Magellan walks out of that court with a limp, a stack of grievances, and a chip on his shoulder, the size of an unknown continent. So he goes underground, not into a cave, but into archives and map rooms. He buries himself beneath layers of charts, logbooks, and secret reports smuggled from the Portuguese Empire. On paper, the world becomes a puzzle. Under the Treaty of Tordesillas, the globe is sliced into two invisible hemispheres, Portuguese on one side, Spanish on the other. How about the fact that if you fudge the size of the Earth just enough, the Spice Islands fall on Spain's side? Magellan sees it. He traces miles of hypothetical routes with his finger, west from Europe, across an ocean no one has fully mapped, through a hidden passage at the bottom of South America into another sea. Then he does the unforgivable. He contacts Spanish agents, quiet meetings, closed doors, a Portuguese noble offering to turn his homeland's most guarded secrets into Spain's backdoor key to the Spice Fortress. Cut to the audience chamber. Young King Charles I of Spain, not yet the world-straddling Charles V, listening to a foreigner pitch treason wrapped as opportunity. Magellan promises a westward route to the Moluccas. He swears the crossing is manageable because the Earth is smaller than the cautious scholars say. He insists there is a strait, a narrow throat beneath the southern continent that will spill them into a new ocean and straight toward the islands of Cloves and Nutmeg. This isn't just exploration, it's a legal loophole with sails. If Magellan is right, Spain can claim the Spice Islands without technically breaking the treaty. If he's wrong, they risk a diplomatic crisis, maybe open war, and the very public loss of ships, silver, and royal prestige. So they cloak the whole complex operation in secrecy and deniability, foreign captain, Spanish flag, vague orders. Don't be fooled by the royal seal on his commission. The Spanish crown does not fully trust this defector. They give him command, but they load the expedition with Spanish captains and officers who outrank him socially and resent him nationally. On paper, it's a balanced command structure. In reality, it's a cramped wooden city of rival egos, locked together for thousands of miles with a Portuguese outsider at the top. Think you know how that ends? Next, you step aboard and watch the powder keg leave the harbor, with mutiny already written in the logbook, just not in ink yet. 5 ships, 270 men, and a secret. Building a floating powder keg, you step from the dock onto a world made of wood and rope. 5 ships, 1 fragile floating system pretending to be an empire. Trinidad, the flagship, about 110 tons, maybe 60 feet of creaking hull from bow to stern, packed with cannons and Magellan's pride. San Antonio, the heavyweight, around 120 tons, broad and slow but carrying vital supplies. Conception and Victoria, smaller, closer to 85 tons each, coastal traders drafted into a global experiment. And Santiago, the runt of the litter, barely 75 tons, a scout more than a warship. Did you know each one is basically a cramped wooden city turned on its side? No iron hulls, no engines, just ribs of oak and pine, tarred seams and sails that snap like nervous flags. Designed for hugging coastlines, not vanishing for thousands of miles into an ocean no European has mapped. Beneath the decks, the air is a wet, salty soup. Men, pigs, chickens, barrels, gunpowder, and secrets, all jammed into a swaying box. Look down into the crew lists and you see the hidden complexity. Around 270 men, not just Spaniards. Portuguese pilots and gunner crews, Italians and French seamen, German gunners, Greek sailors, a few Africans and Asians working the ropes. And Enrique of Malacca, Magellan's enslaved Malay interpreter, walking quietly through it all. The only person on board who can actually talk to the people who live in the Spice Islands they're chasing. You get hardened veterans who've seen combat, next to convicts offered a way out, next to poor farm boys chasing a fantasy of cloves, cinnamon, and a payday that could buy a stone house in any city in Europe. Same decks, very different worlds in their heads. Now add the leadership problem. Spanish officers taking orders from a Portuguese commander who used to sail for their enemy. How about the fact that some of them carry secret letters from the crown, quietly instructed to watch Magellan, report back, and, if needed, rein him in? Juan de Cartagena, captain of San Antonio, believes he should be co-commander, not a subordinate. On paper, it's a hierarchy. In practice, it's a cold war in a hot wooden fortress. Then there's the math error. Magellan has underestimated the size of Earth, so they load food and water for what they think will be a manageable crossing. Barrels of salted beef and pork, hardtack that already crunches with hidden weevils, casks of wine doubling as morale and hydration, live animals tied to the rail, bleeding above a cargo hold that smells like a compost pile at sea. If the voyage runs long, it all rots, runs out, or both. September 1519. Bells ring over Seville. Crowds line the riverbanks. Banners snap. 5 ships glide down the Guadalquivir like a moving festival, from Seville to Sanlúcar, then out toward the Atlantic horizon. On the surface, it looks like a triumphal parade. Don't be fooled. Beneath the cheers, under the decks, the real engines are bad charts, private grudges, and sealed letters. The moment those hulls lose sight of land, the hidden voyage begins. Think you know what breaks first? The ships or the men? Next, you watch what happens when this floating powder keg hits its first real storm of weather and of loyalty. Into the Atlantic, storms, sabotage, and the first signs of rebellion, the land falls away behind them, and the Atlantic opens like a black mouth. You're on deck now, watching Spain shrink into haze while 5 ships stretch into a thin, fragile line. On paper, it's a royal expedition. Out here, it feels more like bait. They slide down the coast of Africa first, hugging land the way a nervous swimmer hugs the pool wall. Contrary winds slam the sails, shove the hulls back toward Europe, then die without warning. Did you know entire days vanish in this push and pull? The fleet clawing for miles and losing them overnight, as if the ocean is erasing their progress in real time? Then the storms arrive, not polite squalls, walls of water. The formation shatters in the dark. One ship vanishes into the rain, another is a dim lantern miles off the beam, and every mast sounds like it's screaming. Men are 50 feet up in the rigging, knuckles white on soaked rope, while the decks beneath their boots twist like a living animal. Look down, and the sea is just black, a moving pit waiting to swallow anyone who slips. Magellan stands in it like a stone. No theatrics, no shouted prayers, just hard orders. Sails reefed at once, no talking on watch. Anyone who lags on the braces gets whipped. It works. The masts stay up, the hulls hold, the system of discipline becomes a kind of floating fortress. But every lash cuts more than skin. It cuts trust. Because while the storm is loud, the real thunder is underground, in the hidden politics between decks. How about the fact that Magellan still hasn't told his Spanish captains the full route? He has a secret packet of royal instructions, sealed, a private chart, locked in his cabin. He talks about Portuguese spies, about protecting Spain's advantage, about enemies beneath every flag. To his officers, it looks different. It looks like arrogance. Or treason. Juan de Cartagena, the royal inspector, starts holding his own quiet councils on the flagship. Officers bent over the table while Magellan is on another ship entirely. Orders are delayed. Signals are misread. A boat that should launch at dawn waits an extra hour, just long enough to make the commander look weak. Cartagena doesn't whisper his challenge either. He walks the quarterdeck and says it out loud. As the king's representative, he claims equal command. National pride versus royal appointment, Spanish blood versus a Portuguese outsider. You can feel the layers stacking. One world on the logbooks, another world beneath. By the time they cross to South America, the fear of Portuguese interception hangs over every horizon. Any sail on the edge of vision could be a hunter. Any delay could be betrayal. Think you know what keeps sailors up at night? It's not the waves. It's the rumor that their own captain is steering them into a trap. They reach the South American coast at last, not to relief, but to a colder wind. The fleet begins to creep south, mile after mile, probing for a rumored passage that might not exist. Rations are already tight. Biscuits show weevils. Water casks sour. Magellan refuses to turn back. The Spanish captains start meeting in whispers again. This time, the question is simple and lethal. If he won't stop, will we have to stop him? Let's get into it. You're about to see how that question turns from talk into open mutiny at the edge of the known world. Winter in Patagonia. The Easter Mutiny and Magellan's ruthless answer. You want to see a voyage go off the rails? Look down at the map. The neat line south from Spain just slams into a frozen, windswept wall called Patagonia. Puerto San Julián is not a cozy winter harbor. It's a desolate bite in the coast, miles from any known city, hammered by Antarctic winds that cut through wool and bone. The shoreline looks empty, dead, like the edge of the world. No secret passage, no strait, just gray water, black rock, and dwindling barrels of food. When Magellan orders the fleet to stay here for the winter, officers whisper that this isn't leadership anymore. It's suicide. Did you know some of them are already drafting their exit plan? By Easter 1520, the plan snaps into action. In the dark, while most of the crew huddles beneath deck against the cold, 3 Spanish captains move. Quesada, Cartagena, Mendoza's men. One after another, they seize their ships like little floating fortresses, locking loyalists below, posting armed guards on the gangways, turning masts and rigging into an improvised command system. Signals flash across the harbor. Orders are shouted that don't come from Magellan. Letters go out over the water, carried by boat under the crucifixion bells of Easter morning. They demand Magellan step down, or turn back, or face a united Spanish command that refuses to follow a stubborn foreigner into an endless, frozen maze. Think you know chain of command? Out here, it's whoever controls the cannon. Magellan reads the letters in his cramped cabin, wind howling outside like the world itself wants him gone. His answer is not a speech. It's a trap. He invites one mutinous officer aboard under the pretense of negotiation, then has him seized the moment his boots hit the deck. A loyal boarding party, hidden beneath the gunwales, rows silently through the night, climbs the side of one rebel ship, and takes it in a sudden burst of steel and shouting. No grand battle, just a surgical strike that cuts the mutiny's command system in half. Then he turns the flagship. Slowly, deliberately, he brings its heavy guns to bear on another captured vessel, anchoring it in the crosshairs of a floating fortress. One broadside, and that ship is splinters and bodies. The message is clear: surrender or vanish beneath the waves. They surrender. Now comes the price. Quesada is judged guilty, beheaded, and quartered. His limbs are hoisted up on pikes along the shore, flapping in the polar wind, a human warning sign measured in feet instead of ink. Cartagena and a priestly ally are rowed to the barren coast and left there with minimal supplies, effectively erased from the world's map. Lesser conspirators are whipped until their backs look like torn canvas, chained, forced into the hardest labor on the coldest days. How about the fact that the expedition has barely left the Atlantic, and the captain has already executed his own officers and abandoned others to die beneath a frozen sky? On paper, the fleet is loyal again. In reality, it's an underground complex of fear and silence. No one talks freely. No one trusts fully. They've seen what happens when you challenge the man at the center of this system. Don't be fooled by the calm that follows. Ahead, beyond this bleak harbor, lies a narrow, hidden slit in the continent that will become the Strait of Magellan. And as the ships finally turn south again, every sailor knows one secret truth. If the sea doesn't kill them, their own commander just might. So what happens when they actually reach the edge of that unknown passage, the Strait of Magellan, shipwreck, desertion, and a one-way door. They reach it at last. The edge of the map. A slit in the continent where the Atlantic seems to pour underground into the unknown, framed by cliffs that rise like the walls of a drowned fortress. Did you know the Strait of Magellan isn't one clean channel, but a maze? Miles of cold, narrow waterways, blind corners, hidden shoals, and black rock waiting just feet beneath the surface. Wind hits you from one side, current from the other. One wrong turn, and the whole system turns into a grinding machine, built to chew timber and bone. Magellan already has proof. Weeks earlier, he sent the small caravel Santiago ahead, down the coast, to scout for an opening. Think you know how that went? A sudden storm hammers it against the Patagonian shore. Masts snap, hull rips. The ship breaks on the rocks while the crew claws their way onto land, watching their only shelter explode into splinters. Now picture this. Survivors stumbling back overland for miles through frozen wind and marsh, half-starved, carrying almost nothing. They reach the main fleet with a simple report. The southern world is not a friendly place. That wreck is the expedition's first hard proof that these waters will not forgive a mistake. And yet, when they finally nose into the strait itself in late October 1520, Magellan does not slow down. He doubles down. Let's get into it. Fog drops like a curtain. Icy rain lashes the decks. One moment you see the next ship ahead, the next, it's gone, swallowed by gray. Sailors climb rigging, straining their eyes for any sign of an exit to the west, any break in the black teeth of the coastline. Below deck, the talk is different. Men whisper that this is a dead end, a trap, a hidden cul-de-sac beneath the world. They beg to turn back into the open Atlantic, to the familiar map, to any city that still feels real. Magellan refuses. He's convinced this complex of channels is the key to everything. The Spice Islands, the Emperor's favor, his own name carved into history. Then comes the pattern break no one expects. In the middle of the confusion, the largest ship, the San Antonio, simply vanishes. Under cover of fog and fractured signals, its officers swing the bow around, run the current backward, and bolt for Spain. How about the fact that they don't just take food and gunpowder? They take charts, logs, secret notes on currents and inlets that no other European captain has seen. When San Antonio finally reaches home, her officers deliver a very convenient story. Magellan is reckless, maybe mad, maybe even working against Spanish interests. On paper, the deserters become the reasonable ones. Out in the strait, the men who stayed don't know any of that yet. All they know is that they're down to 3 ships in a one-way corridor. Turning back would mean fighting the same shifting winds, the same underground-feeling labyrinth, in reverse. And then, suddenly, the walls fall away. The cliffs recede, the current relaxes, the fleet spills out into a vast, flat horizon with no land in sight. Magellan names it Mar Pacífico, the Pacific, calm sea. Don't be fooled. That glassy surface is a lie. Ahead lies an ocean so wide that for 3 months they will sail without seeing a single new shore, and there is no easy door back through the rock they've just escaped. 99 days of nothing, starving across the unknown Pacific out there. Beyond that calm blue doorway, Magellan is certain he's cracked the world. Weeks, he tells them, a clean westward line across a small ocean to the Spice Islands. Did you know the maps on his table squeezed the Pacific into a neat, convenient gap, as if you could tuck an entire ocean beneath the corner of a royal charter? He sails into a void that is thousands of miles wider than his calculations. No one on board knows that. Not yet. So the fleet pushes on with confidence, carrying just enough food for what they expect will be a hard month. Not the 99-day descent that follows when the horizon stays empty and the sea turns into a flat, burning mirror. Daily life collapses first in the barrels. Fresh water goes bad. It turns yellow, then thick, with a greasy skin floating on top. The hard biscuit, once a staple, crumbles into dust and writhes with worms when you break it open. Salted meat blooms with rot. You hold your breath, scrape off the mold, and swallow anyway. When that runs out, the menu drops underground into a hidden layer of desperation. Sawdust scraped from the beams, leather straps boiled until they're soft enough to chew, candle wax, and any rat unlucky enough to be seen on deck. How about the fact that a single rat can sell for more than a sailor's monthly pay? Men stalk the dark corners of the hull like hunters in a buried city, listening for tiny claws in the planks beneath their feet. They gnaw on leather soaked in seawater until their jaws ache. The stench of unwashed bodies, rancid food, and stale air turns each ship into a floating sewer. Then the real horror surfaces. Scurvy moves through the crew like a silent weapon system. Gums swell, then split, teeth loosen and fall out. Old scars reopen. Legs puff up, blacken, and refuse to bend. Men who once flew up the rigging now crawl, too weak to stand. At night, bodies are slid over the side without ceremony. The splash is quick. The roll call is edited. Officers keep 2 logs, one for the official record and one for the ugly count of the dead. Think you know how bad a mutiny can get? Magellan knows that if the true numbers get out, fear will spread faster than disease, so the paper world of dates and distances stays neat, while the real complex of suffering beneath it grows. Psychologically, the Pacific becomes its own fortress. No storms, no birds, just an endless, polished blue dome by day and a cold, indifferent sky by night. Week after week, the world offers no landmark, no island, no break. Some sailors whisper that they've sailed off the map into a cursed sea, that this ocean has no opposite shore at all. Magellan refuses that. He clings to his charts, to his faith, to the geometry in his head. The earth is a sphere, the spices are west, and by his numbers it cannot be much farther. Don't be fooled, that certainty is as dangerous as any reef. Every day he orders the sails trimmed and the course held. Every day the ocean answers with the same blank line. When land finally rises from the horizon, first the Mariana Islands, then Guam, it feels unreal. Green, solid, loud, with birds and human voices. The men who stagger ashore look like ghosts crawling out from beneath the world, skin hanging loose, gums raw, eyes sunken. They trade nails, cloth, any remaining metal for coconuts, rice, and fresh water, tearing into fruit like animals. For a moment, the fleet becomes a temporary city of relief at anchor, a fragile surface layer over months of buried trauma. Let's get into it. This is not the triumphant arrival Magellan promised. Guam is a pause button, not a finish line. The Spice Islands are still far to the west, past more unknown coasts and more hidden dangers. And waiting ahead on a sunlit beach in the Philippines is the twist no one on board can see yet. The death of the man who dragged them this far around the planet. First contact in the Philippines, alliances, conversions, and a fatal ego they sail west into what looks like a reward. Green shorelines. Smoke from cooking fires. Canoes cutting over clear water like they're gliding across glass. After months of a floating graveyard in the Pacific, the Philippines in March 1521 feels like another planet. And Magellan, he walks onto these beaches like he's entering his own hidden capital city. Did you know this is the first time on the voyage that local rulers don't meet them with drawn blades or empty warehouses? Here, the islands are lush, the food is abundant, and the chiefs are interested. Spices, iron, trade goods, strange men in metal shells with weapons that thunder from yards away. Suddenly, the half-starved captain turns into a power broker, presenting himself as the representative of a distant king who controls half the world. Look down at the beach at Cebu. You've got Raja Humabon on one side, Magellan on the other, and between them, a language barrier that could kill any deal. Then Enrique steps forward. Magellan's enslaved Malay interpreter, taken years earlier from somewhere in Southeast Asia, opens his mouth and the whole system changes. He can talk to them. He understands the layers of their politics and their trade routes, the way chiefs measure power and honor. How about the fact that his words, not Magellan's, are what actually connect two worlds? If Enrique had once traveled east with Magellan from Malacca to Europe, and now he's here speaking with islanders in their own tongues, he might be the first human to circle most of the globe by language and culture, even if the paperwork will never say his name. Magellan seizes the moment. He doesn't just trade. He stages theater. Crosses raised, banners unfurled, muskets fired as holy fireworks. Raja Humabon and his wife are baptized in a sweeping ceremony, hundreds of followers kneeling in the surf, the shoreline turned into an open-air cathedral. In one move, Magellan ties religion, politics, and commerce into a single contract, convert swear loyalty to the King of Spain, pay tribute, and in return, you get protection and access to this new European weapons complex. Don't be fooled though, protection cuts both ways. When Humabon points across the water toward the island of Mactan and complains about a rival chieftain, Lapu-Lapu, resisting his authority, Magellan hears an opportunity. Here's a local feud over who controls a few miles of coastline, and he turns it into a test of Christian and Spanish supremacy. His officers warn him. The men are exhausted, the gunpowder is limited, the reefs and shallows around Mactan are a natural fortress they don't understand. Why risk it when the Spice Islands are still ahead? Magellan refuses to back down. Honor, glory, a demonstration. He promises Humabon that at dawn he will crush Lapu-Lapu. So picture it. First light, the tide too low for the ships to get close. Magellan wading hundreds of feet through waist-deep water in heavy armor, musketeers struggling to keep powder dry, while Lapu-Lapu's warriors wait on familiar sand with bamboo spears and coral under their heels. His captains hang back, watching the gap grow between common sense and their commander. Let's get into it. In a few minutes, this local argument will explode into the Battle of Mactan, and the voyage around the world will lose the man who started it. The death of Magellan, chaos, betrayal, and a vanishing hero you're standing in the surf with them when it breaks. The formation that crossed an ocean now falls apart in 3 feet of water. Spanish muskets crack from too far away. Crossbow bolts splash short. The tide drags at armor and boots, turning every step into slow motion while, on the shore, Lapu-Lapu's warriors are light, fast, and barefoot on their own coral fortress. Did you know the first man to lead a voyage around the world died within bowshot of a beach he didn't need to attack? Magellan wades forward anyway. He orders the village burned, fires licking up bamboo and thatch behind him while his line stretches thin across the shallows. The local allies he counted on hang back. His own captains hesitate. Then the swarm hits. Hundreds of warriors rush the waterline, a moving wall of spears, shields, and sling stones, hammering the armored knot of Europeans from every angle. Look down at the scene, Spaniards tripping on hidden rocks, shields up against a rain of stones, swords too short to answer the 6-foot bamboo spears stabbing in from just out of reach. A poisoned arrow bites into Magellan's leg. A spear glances off his helmet. Another punches through his arm. He's still calling orders when a blade opens his face and the tight little system of command around him simply collapses. Men break. Some run for the boats, some try to drag him back. Lapu-Lapu's fighters close the circle, hacking, thrusting, shouting in a language the Europeans don't understand. Magellan goes down in waist-deep water, vanishing under bodies and foam. No heroic last stand on a cliff. No banner. No body to recover. The architect of the voyage just disappears beneath the waves of a local power dispute. How about the fact that the man whose name would brand the first circumnavigation never even sees half the route, and there isn't a single bone to bring home as proof he was worth the price? Back on the ships, the impact is instant. Leadership gone, rival captains who once mutinied against him suddenly have to act like adults. Emergency councils, whispered alliances, people counting how many officers are left and which ones they actually trust. In the middle of this, one more fracture line appears. Enrique. Magellan's Malay interpreter, enslaved years earlier, had a promise in his will: freedom. The new commanders ignore it. They keep him beneath deck, still a possession, still a tool. Don't be fooled by the paperwork. In this floating city, power is personal, and grudges are live ammunition. Days later in Cebu, a feast is announced. Hospitality on the surface, a hidden kill box beneath. Spanish officers come ashore, sit, eat, relax, then knives. Ambush, panic, many die where they sit. Some sources whisper Enrique knew, or at least stopped warning them. Whether that's true or not, the effect is real. Another layer of command wiped out, trust with local rulers shattered. Now the expedition is a bleeding remnant with 3 ships, too few men to sail them, and Portuguese agents waiting like a global early warning system. Think you know how this ends? The survivors face a fork in the map. Turn back east against wind, current, and an enemy empire, or do something no one has ever done on purpose. They choose west. Across the Indian Ocean, around the hidden underside of Africa, chasing a full circle of the world without the man who started it. Let's get into how a lesser-known captain turns this broken fleet into the first completed circumnavigation, and why his name isn't the one you learned in school. Elcano steps up. From anonymous navigator to first circumnavigator, you've heard this story as Magellan's Voyage. But look down at the deck of the last surviving ship, months after his death, and you won't find Magellan. You'll find a quieter figure at the helm, Juan Sebastian Elcano. Did you know the first man to actually sail all the way around the world started this journey in legal trouble? Elcano was a Basque mariner from the rugged northern coast of Spain, a former ship owner who had once sold his vessel to foreigners in violation of Spanish law. Not a prince, not a famous admiral. More like a small business captain who got on the wrong side of the crown and went looking for a way back into favor. So he signs on to Magellan's expedition, not as a heroic lead, as a relatively low-ranking but highly competent navigator on the Trinidad, one officer among many in a floating United Nations of Spaniards, Portuguese, Italians, and Basques. On paper, he's just another name in a very crowded roster. Then the world system above him collapses. Mutinies in the Strait of Magellan, executions, desertions back to Spain. A ship lost on the Patagonian coast, another wrecked on a hidden reef. Magellan himself killed in the Philippines, dragged down in knee-deep water by warriors who never cared about European maps. The high-born captains are dead, disgraced, or distrusted. The chain of command looks like a broken ladder. In that vacuum, the crew does something very practical. They look for someone who isn't a walking civil war. Elcano emerges, not because he's loud, but because he isn't. He has miles of ocean behind him, a reputation as a steady navigator, and no grand imperial ego to feed. On the Victoria, he brings a survival-first style of leadership. Less glory, more getting home alive. By the time they reach the Spice Islands, the Maluku, they finally hit the jackpot. Cloves, nutmeg, mace, enough cargo in the holds to pay for the entire expedition, and then some. But here's the problem. Too few men. Too many damaged hulls. 2 ships left, Trinidad and Victoria, and not enough hands to safely sail both home on separate routes, as the original complex plan demanded. So they split the risk. Trinidad will attempt the experimental route, back east across the Pacific against prevailing winds and currents. It never makes it. Caught in storms, jury-rigged, finally seized by the Portuguese. That branch of the story ends in a prison cell. Elcano, on Victoria chooses the path that looks like suicide on a map. Continue west, across the Indian Ocean, around the Cape of Good Hope, straight through waters Portugal guards like a floating fortress. How about the fact that his ship is leaking, his men are starving, and every port along that coastline is a potential trap? And yet, that insane line works. Victoria claws around Africa's underside, limps up the Atlantic, and staggers into Spain in 1522. One continuous loop. Start in Seville, return to Seville, always west. So, who actually completes the first documented circumnavigation? Not Magellan, who dies in the Philippines and never closes the circle. It's Elcano, the once anonymous Basque navigator. But don't be fooled by the textbooks that still headline this as Magellan's trip. History likes a bold originator more than a grim finisher. Think you know how we assign credit for discoveries? In the next section, you'll see what Elcano's crew looked like when they crawled ashore, and how Spain quietly rewrote this brutal victory into a cleaner legend, running the Portuguese gauntlet, a silent race home with a ship full of spices, so when those 18 scarecrows in human form finally stagger back into Spain, you're looking at the end of a story that almost got erased halfway across the world. To see why, you have to go underground into the legal maze they were sailing through. Did you know that, on Portuguese maps and in Portuguese law, the Spice Islands were already taken? Under their reading of the Treaty of Tordesillas, the world was sliced like an orange, with an invisible line running miles down the globe. Everything east, Portugal's. Everything west, Spain's. On paper, the Moluccas sat neatly in the Portuguese half, so a Spanish ship sitting there, loading cloves by the barrel, that wasn't trade. That was a crime scene. Elcano knew it. Portuguese captains knew it. If Victoria got stopped, the best case scenario was total confiscation. Worst case, chains, interrogation, and a quick trial for piracy or trespass in a royal monopoly. Don't be fooled by the polite language of treaties. In practice, this was a knife fight disguised as paperwork. So Elcano flips the script. Instead of sailing north into well-charted, Portuguese patrolled shipping lanes and safe ports, he aims Victoria south, into a more hidden corridor of the Indian Ocean. No friendly cities, no guaranteed fresh water, no handy fortress to duck into if a storm hits. Just open water and the hope that distance is a better shield than diplomacy. Let's get into it. His strategy is brutal in its simplicity. Stay away from land, stay away from witnesses. He refuses to resupply at Portuguese ports, skips harbors that could betray them, and hugs a low, dangerous latitude where storms roll across the world's surface like an endless conveyor belt. It's a silent race home, with no one officially chasing them and everyone potentially waiting ahead. Conditions on Victoria start peeling back in layers. The hull leaks. Pumps clatter day and night. Food rots. Water turns slimy. Scurvy, that old underground killer of long voyages, creeps back in, swollen gums, bleeding wounds, men too weak to climb the rigging. They are already a skeleton crew after years of mutiny, shipwrecks, and war. Now they pare rations down again, stretching every crust of bread, every strip of dried fish, as if each bite is a coin they can only spend once. Rumors travel faster than sails. They hear of Portuguese caravels sighted miles away. A strange mast on the horizon sparks instant panic. Do they run? Do they hide in a squall and pray the other ship doesn't look down at their tiny silhouette in the waves? Tense debates erupt over whether to risk unaligned African coasts for food. Step ashore and you might get grain, or you might get sold out to the nearest Portuguese factor. And then comes the Cape of Good Hope. From the west, it's less good and more world-ending. This is where storms stack in a complex system of wind and current that has chewed up ships for centuries. Battered rigging, half-dead men, a hull that sounds like it's breathing through its wounds, and Elcano still chooses to cut wide into the open ocean rather than hug the coast. Turn back, and they die unknown. Turn in, and they meet Portuguese patrols. So they aim straight into the fortress of waves instead. How many of them actually make it past that corner of the world? In the next section, you'll see what crawling around that cape cost them in blood, bodies, and silence. Crawling back to Spain, the last deaths before immortality, you've seen them aim straight into that fortress of waves. Now picture what surviving the Cape of Good Hope actually looks like. It's not heroic silhouettes against sunsets. It's black water hitting the hull like falling stone, masts shuddering, sails ripping open faster than men can patch them. The Victoria claws her way from west to north, every mile a negotiation with gravity, with wind, with a ship that wants to roll over and vanish beneath the surface. Men stagger to the pumps. Some can't even grip the handles. Their legs are so swollen from scurvy, they look like they've been wrapped in rope. They pump anyway, in shifts that blur into each other. Because if the bilge wins, the world's first circumnavigation ends a few hundred feet underwater, in the dark, and Elcano has to make the call. Hug the African coast, slow down, hunt for food in bays patrolled by Portuguese caravels, or run the gauntlet offshore, half-starved, in open ocean. Speed or safety? Survival or capture? Did you know his solution is brutal in its simplicity? He chooses speed. He gambles that starving men can outsail a global empire. So the ship crawls up the west coast of Africa like a dying animal. Rations are cut again. Then again. The menu is a bad joke. A few ounces of rice, rancid water, whatever grease and crumbs can be scraped from the hidden layers of barrels and seams. Some men are too weak to come on deck. Some are too weak to even tell anyone their names before they die. They guard the spice cargo like a floating bank vault. Cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, bales of dried plants worth more than the hull carrying them. Think you know what desperation looks like? Imagine watching another man die on the planks beside you while you sit on a fortune you can't eat. Then comes Cape Verde. Pattern interrupt. After weeks of not stopping, Elcano suddenly does. A Portuguese possession, a trap painted as an island. He sends a small party ashore with a cover story. They're from a ship heading from the Americas, just buying food. Don't be fooled. The sailors look like ghosts in rags, and their story has holes. Portuguese officials notice. Questions multiply. Weights of bread are checked, accents analyzed, explanations compared. How about the fact that the illusion cracks not because of some grand interrogation, but because the men are too exhausted to keep their lies straight? Arrests follow. In a snap decision, Elcano cuts the anchor cable and runs. Victoria flees without her captured crewmen, leaving them behind as the final human payment. Let's get into the last approach, a whole held together by patches and prayer, sails stitched into a complex quilt, fewer than 20 men able to stand at once. They inch into Sanilcar in September 1522. Locals look down from the docks and see not a triumphant armada, but a wreck that somehow forgot to sink. Word races inland. By the time Victoria limps up to Seville, the riverbanks are a living corridor of shock. This is the expedition everyone had buried in their minds years ago. Now it's back, but in fragments. In the courts above, the reaction is colder, more calculated. Elcano and the survivors are presented to King Charles. They're given honors, coats of arms, pensions. They're paraded as proof that Spain's global system works, that its reach now wraps around the world. But listen to the names that echo loudest in the halls. Magellan's, not Elcano's. Did you know the cargo of spices they protected through storms, starvation, and arrests sells for nearly enough to pay for the entire expedition? On paper, the insane gamble balances out. In ledgers, it almost looks neat. On deck, it doesn't. 18 men stand where more than 200 once sailed. The world has been circled, but at a human scale, it feels less like a victory lap and more like a mass grave drawn as a line. And yet, with their return, something underground in Europe's imagination cracks open. Maps will redraw. Trade routes will shift. In the next section, you'll see how this one battered ship rewires the mental fortress of what Earth is, and what it costs when a city of sailors disappears so a new world can appear on paper, what the first circumnavigation really proved, and what it cost. Look down at that neat line you've been following across the map. Don't be fooled. What Victoria dragged back to Spain wasn't just a route, it was a hard reset on how the world worked. Did you know most educated Europeans already accepted a round Earth long before Magellan sailed? The debate wasn't flat versus sphere, it was size, distance, risk. Could you sail west to Asia without vanishing into an economic black hole? This voyage answered that with brutal clarity, yes, you can go all the way around. And it is far, far worse than they imagined. The Pacific looked like a gap on a page, a blue hallway between the Americas and Asia. Then Magellan's crew spent 3 months crossing it, crawling miles a day over empty water, watching their bodies collapse. Mapmakers suddenly had to stretch that blue hallway into a vast underground of blank ink. A swollen ocean that blew up every optimistic chart. How about the fact that one miserable crossing forced cartographers to redraw the world with a much bigger void between New Spain and the Spice Islands? Out there, the voyage also turned into a floating laboratory. Dead reckoning, log lines, eclipse notes, latitude estimates scrawled in salt-stained journals. When navigators compared their travel times, their rough distances, their celestial readings, one pattern cut through the noise. Earlier estimates of Earth's size were way too generous. The globe wasn't a tight little fortress, it was a sprawling, hostile system. Future expeditions would need more food, more water, more men, more backup plans. This disaster became data. Every corpse on that route was a point on an invisible graph saying, pack more or die. Politically, the impact hit just as hard. Spain now had a legal and practical claim. You could reach the fabled spice city of the Moluccas by sailing west, under its own flag, without touching Portuguese-controlled waters. That single loop intensified the rivalry with Portugal, triggered new negotiations over where, exactly, the world should be sliced, and nudged Spain away from trying to punch into the Portuguese Indian Ocean fortress. Instead, its focus slid toward the Americas and the Pacific, toward silver, galleon routes, and island chains that would become stepping stones for a global empire. But count the bodies. Roughly 270 men left Seville. 18 completed the full circumnavigation on Victoria. The rest vanished in storms, mutinies, executions, battles, disease, shipwrecks, or captivity. Many names are a line or two in a ledger, buried beneath ink and indifference, while Magellan and Elcano become shorthand for a journey built on anonymous suffering. So what did this first circumnavigation really prove? That Earth could be sailed as one continuous loop? Yes, that the oceans were a connected world, not separate basins? Yes, but it also proved something darker. Once you can draw a circle around the planet, you can turn it into a single extractive system. Think you know this as a clean triumph of exploration? Let's get into it in the next section, where that new global loop becomes a pipeline for silver, spices, slaves, and power. The hidden legacy. Who really owns the first trip around the world? So now that global loop is drawn, look down at those 18 men who stagger back into Seville. Skin hanging off their faces, clothes in rags. One tiny ship. Here's the question that never makes it into the textbook caption. Who actually went around the world? Was it Magellan, the name on the chapter heading, who vanished beneath the waves of Mactan halfway through? Was it Juan Sebastian Elcano, the Basque navigator who nursed Victoria across 36,000 miles of ocean and brought her home? Was it Enrique of Malacca, the enslaved interpreter who had already crossed from Asia to Europe before ever boarding Magellan's fleet, and who might have completed an almost full circle the moment he stepped off in the Philippines? Or was it the anonymous sailors, the ones who froze in the Strait, starved in the Pacific, and never set foot in that home port again? Did you know the official line for centuries was just, Magellan circumnavigated the globe? Clean, marketable, one heroic name on the cover, not a whole complex web of mutinies, betrayals, and shared suffering. Don't be fooled. That simplification isn't an accident. It's hard to put a dead captain, a mutiny survivor, an enslaved translator, and dozens of lost crewmen on a single statue. It's much easier to chisel one face into stone and let the rest fall into the ocean. How about the fact that this pattern isn't unique to one voyage? Think you know firsts in exploration and science? Underground, beneath almost every big breakthrough, there's a hidden workforce. Teams of nameless sailors behind a famous admiral. Indigenous pilots showing discoverers where the channels really are. Assistants, calculators, and field hands behind the astronomer with the portrait. The first circumnavigation is just a perfect case study. A world-spanning system of credit and erasure, cleaned up into a single heroic arc you can teach in a paragraph. Now split the view. From the deck of Victoria, the Earth is not a neat blue sphere on a classroom poster. It's weeks of empty horizon, rotting gums, dead friends sewn into canvas and dropped overboard. Strange coasts where you don't know the language, the currents, or which greeting is going to turn into a fight. From the royal map room, the same journey becomes a thin ink line. A new fortress of trade routes, a secret network of winds and currents that can be priced, taxed, and weaponized. That gap in perspective hasn't gone away. Today, global trade looks like smooth arrows on a screen to some, and like miles of container yards, sweat, and shipwrecks to others. The loop Magellan started is still tightening around the planet. So here's your exit question. If the official first trip around the world hides this much brutality, this many erased names, what else in your history books is built on a single famous face standing on top of a buried city of forgotten stories? If you want to keep digging into those layers, lost expeditions, erased navigators, secret maps, and underground empires, hit subscribe and keep going. Because this voyage is just one crack in the surface. The next one goes even deeper.